about our clients, because the reason why we find a need to change constantly is because they're constantly changing. And we'll talk about all the things that we see with them, and we'll talk a little bit about ourselves, and along the way I'll show some work that I think exemplify some of these trends. So as I mentioned, RGA was founded in '77. In the first 9 years, we were a visual effects company. We were one of the early pioneers of that entire industry, and we invented a lot of proprietary technology in the feature film business, and we won Academy Awards for our work back then. In the mid-'80s, we reinvented the entire model of production and broadcast. So we continued to work in film, but we became one of the leading broadcast production companies, and we ended up working on thousands of television commercials on the production side. And there was a period of time where we had technology that no one else had. We really were the only place that you could come to do these kinds of techniques with your television commercials. But by the mid-'90s, all of the amazing technology that RGA had invented and had a proprietary lock on had moved very quickly and became off-the-shelf software. And the production business was changed dramatically almost overnight. Because of digital technology, of course, is what changed everything. And so we saw the need to reinvent yet again. And in '95, we began a path to reinvent RGA as an agency. And that was right around the time that the web emerged. And so that seemed like a good bet to make in terms of a new agency business. And we made that transition. And by about 2004, we had completely made the transition from production company to agency. RGA was established as one of the leading interactive agencies in the world. And we saw an even broader opportunity to completely reinvent the agency business. We called ourselves the agency for the digital age, and we began to think about what it meant to be an agency in the 21st century and meeting the needs of clients in that era. But anyway, we're at the end of that cycle, so we've been in this period of transition that really started a couple of years ago. These transitions sort of happen gradually. It's not like a light switch is flipped and suddenly we're in a new business. They happen gradually. And we're building up to what we think will be the next iteration of RGA. We don't have a name for it yet, but I think it'll be apparent what we're thinking as I go through this presentation. So why do we feel the need to reinvent again? We're very successful. We've grown dramatically. We make good money for our parent company, which is Interpublic Group. We win a lot of awards. We have a lot of industry recognition. We work on behalf of some of the greatest clients in the world. I think it's pretty obvious that the time to reinvent is when you're doing well. It's really hard to reinvent yourself when the business is doing poorly. So this is a great time to be thinking about reinvention, and that's why we're down the path of doing this at the moment. But it's really because of our clients. And I think if you look at the history of business, and if you look at the Fortune 500, the Global 1000, all of the big brands, all the big clients that all of the people who work in the agency business chase after, they've all had an almost identical history, even though they've worked in very different industries. All of the clients that we work on behalf of have almost identical business strategies when you think about it, when you get down to the fundamental insights about business. And also, I think the second point is that those business strategies have largely played out and that new strategies are emerging. If you go back in time to any big company today, they all started with some entrepreneur, some inventor creating a new product or a new service. That's represented by the black dot. And that product or service finds traction with some consumer audience out there, and it begins to grow. And that's the start of any company, right? You have some idea and you put it out in the market and it begins to grow. But the way that almost every major company grows is they replicate that process over and over again. They create more and more products, more and more brands, so that eventually they become dominant in a particular industry or category. It could be automobiles, it could be financial services, it could be packaged goods. But the same pattern repeats itself over and over again with every major company. And we call this horizontal integration. This is a term that economists use to describe this process of adding products and brands to create a whole portfolio within a category. A great example would be Coca-Cola. Coke was founded in 1886. The original invention was this product called Coca-Cola. There was a pharmacist in Atlanta, Georgia, who invented the formulation of Coke. And in the early days of the company, of the brand, it was available in exactly one pharmacy in Atlanta, Georgia. And every day about 10 or so customers would come in, and they would stand at the counter of this pharmacy, and they would have a glass of Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola was a great brand, obviously, and even if they had just stuck with that one brand, they still probably would have grown and become a very big company. But the way that Coke grew is they added dozens and dozens of products and brands. The modern version of Coca-Cola has over 500 brands. They make over 3,500 products, sold in over 200 countries around the world, and they sell an astonishing 1.7 billion beverages per day. So the history of Coke is really the history of this phenomenon of horizontal integration by growing, by adding more and more brands. Now, horizontal integration was really great for the agency business because we got involved pretty early on. We were one of the key pillars of how all these companies grew. We were the ones that helped them create awareness around all these new products that they were inventing and helped develop demand for these new brands. And as they grew, we grew in parallel with them. Every single one of these new products or brands was a new scope of work for some agency out there. And the agency business grew almost in tandem with the growth of all of these major clients. Now, what's one of the big downsides of horizontal integration is that over time, you proliferate, as Coke did with over 500 different products and brands. But their key competitor, PepsiCo, which started also with one product or brand, has over 200 brands. And there's other companies in the category like Nestle and Dr. Pepper Snapple Group that have hundreds of more brands. So over time, the process of horizontal integration has created the world that we live in today, where there's really unprecedented choice and competition for consumers in just about every major category. We as consumers have very little loyalty or need to be loyal to any one particular brand in any category because we have so much choice and so much competition. And this leads to the real problem of growth today in the 21st century. It's the problem of commoditization. Business is very mature, starting back with the industrial age up to where we are now. The number of brands that's been introduced in the last decade, in the last 20 years, it's almost an exponential chart of a number of new product introductions and brand introductions. And we're at a point now where there's probably just too much stuff out there for any one consumer to really grapple with. And all of our clients are telling us the same thing, that they feel very much commoditized, in particular in the Western markets like the US, Canada, Western Europe, and most of them are finding growth today in Asia and in the developing markets of places like China and India or Russia or Brazil, where they can take these big horizontal portfolios of products and brands to these entirely new markets that never had access to their goods before, and that's where they're finding almost all of their growth. But in the developed Western markets like US and Canada, all of them are reporting exactly the same problem. They're having a really hard time growing, and they're not doing really well with the introduction of just a new product or a new brand. And so the formula that they relied on for decades to grow to become the behemoths that they are today, this idea of creating new products or new line extensions and then investing a ton of money in mass media to create awareness for these things as the big driver of growth, all of our clients are telling us that this thing is no longer working for them, and they're kind of feeling stuck. What is this new way of growing? Now, there was a second business strategy that almost all of these companies also pursued that probably started in maybe the last 30 or 40 years, and it's this idea of vertical integration. So if you can't grow your top line anymore, if you can't get any more growth with like a new product or a new brand, then what you do is you try to cut cost on the bottom line. And every company went through this process of trying to squeeze out as much cost in every step along the supply chain and becoming more and more vertically integrated. And there's some companies like ExxonMobil that are completely vertically integrated. They literally control every single stage of that supply chain, and they manage every single piece of it, and I'm sure that they have just hordes of procurement people and cost consultants and IT people who have figured out how to squeeze cost out of every stage. But even companies like Coca-Cola, which we think of as great horizontal marketers, great brand marketers, have become more and more vertically integrated, and even in the last decade, as they've bought up almost the entire distribution network in North America, the former bottlers that distributed their products all over this region. So everyone's becoming even more vertically integrated. Every time one of our clients creates a new retail store that historically sold its goods through third-party retailers, that's another example of becoming more vertically integrated. So I believe that the 20th century had these two business trends, horizontal and vertical integration, really defined business. That's how every company grew. That's how every company maintained profitability in the 20th century. And I largely believe that those two strategies are played out. There's very little growth that's going to happen from creating a new product or a new brand. Occasionally you could have a huge hit in the old formula of growing horizontally. There might be a little bit more cost that you can squeeze out of the bottom line by becoming vertically integrated. But I think the strategy has largely been played out. And right at the time that it's been played out, the digital age came along and it created a whole new business strategy that we're starting to see unfold in the 21st century. And it's really around this idea of value. And how do you create more value for your customers? How do you get the same customer to buy more products from you, more services from you? And it looks quite different. So you might start with a single product or a brand, and the way that you know that you're creating an ecosystem of value is if you have a second product or brand, and you ask a simple question. If somebody owns the thing on the left, would it make more sense for them to buy the thing on the right? Would they get greater value from their original investment of the thing on the left if they bought the thing on the right? And if the answer is yes, then you're down the path of creating an ecosystem of value. And over time, you might have a whole slew of products and services that all surround the same consumer. In the horizontal world, we don't actually go after the same consumer. We get very segmented. We have all these products and brands that go after wildly different consumers, and that's been one of the key tasks of the agency, is to help these brands figure out how to segment further. But in this new world, what we're finding is that there's a new strategy of how to sell more stuff to the same consumer. And we've given a name to it at RGA. We're calling it functional integration. So in contrast to this idea of horizontal or vertical integration, there's a functional connection between all the pieces of this ecosystem that make it work together in a unique way. A great example of this is Apple. It's very cliche to use Apple as an example, of course, but I'm going to do it anyway. Maybe this is a slightly different insight into why Apple is successful. So when Steve Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, they were a horizontally integrated manufacturer of PCs and PC peripherals like printers and things like that. And they had one product that was called the Macintosh, and there were a bunch of different models of Mac. And of course, we all know the story. In 1997, the company was on the verge of collapse. Their market share had dropped to less than 2%. It was down to like 1.5%. They were very, very clearly a PC company, and that was the territory in which they competed. And most of the technology pundits at the time did not feel that Apple could survive, that it was probably going to go out of business, or at best it was going to have to become a Windows Intel sort of company, or it could maybe survive as a little niche company that people who use Photoshop all the time would buy from. Now, of course, we all know what happened. About 3 years after the return of Jobs, they introduced a new operating system called OS X. And if you bought a new Mac at the time and it had OS X on it, you got a free piece of software called iTunes. And the promise of iTunes is you could take your investment in all your CDs, all your music library, and you could digitize them. And you could create your own playlists, and you could reburn them back as entirely new CDs. It was a whole new way of handling music. And of course, it wasn't the first of its kind, but I think iTunes was probably the best at the time in this typical Jobsian fashion of being a perfectionist. And about a year after the launch of iTunes, they introduced a new product called the iPod. And the promise of the iPod is that if you owned a Mac and you had iTunes, you could have 10,000 songs in your pocket. And we're starting to see a functionally integrated ecosystem of value. So you as a consumer made all the sense in the world to you to go out and buy an iPod because you got additional value from your investment in the Mac and your investment of time in using iTunes to digitize your music library. And then an onslaught of different products. That paves the way for a music store to launch within about 2 years. Suddenly Apple takes a complete turn. They're no longer just a PC hardware and software company. They're now in the business of selling music. Here we have this music summit going on here. Of course, the iTunes Music Store completely transformed the music industry. That paves the way a few years later to launch the iPhone and the App Store, and then the iPad comes along, and most recently the launch of a service called iCloud. And I would hazard a guess, you could raise your hands, that many of you in the audience have every single piece of this ecosystem. You've bought every single one of these things. I know that I have, and I have like multiple iterations of just about every one. So this is a great example of functionally integrated ecosystem. I'm one consumer, and I've bought all of this stuff from Apple over the years. They've maximized their revenue with me by creating value across the entire board. They're not the only company that's doing this. Google has an ecosystem that started with search and has grown to include a whole slew of things. We worked on one of the most recent launches of Google's ecosystem last year with the creation of Google Wallet, which we'll talk about in just a few minutes. But even a company like BMW, which we don't think of as a technology company, if you go back just 2 years ago, BMW was a horizontally integrated manufacturer of cars. They had a whole product line of different vehicles that appealed to different consumer niches of people who wanted to have this ultimate driving experience. But as they've gone through their evolution in the last 2 years, every major press release of BMW is about a new service or a new technology that they're launching into the market to complement the driving experience, to create their own ecosystem of value around driving. We really believe that in this era of network media, that this opportunity of creating functionally integrated ecosystems of value is not just something that is relevant to a handful of companies, it's going to be relevant to just about every brand. And in fact, you're either going to become functionally integrated or you're going to go further down the path of becoming more and more commoditized. And we're going to see a lot of transformation of businesses. We're going to see a lot of companies jumping in entirely new businesses that they'd never been involved in before to begin to head down this path. The one that we know most intimately is Nike. They're our oldest client and they're our biggest client. And we first started working together with Nike in 2001. And back then they were the most horizontally integrated manufacturer of athletic apparel. They had the most complete product line across every single major sport category in that particular category. Now our history with Nike over the last decade plus is that we've helped them become more and more functionally integrated by launching an onslaught of new services. We've taken them down the path of just making products to now being in the business of also having services to consumers. The very first of these was in the running category, and this is a great example of that commoditization problem I was talking about earlier. So Nike was founded in 1971, and over about a 20-year history, they grew to become the market share leader in running shoes. They had the most dominant product portfolio. They had almost 80% market share globally, one of the most dominant brands in history. But their business leveled off as all kinds of competitors came in and began picking off different customer segments by introducing different kinds of niche products. New Balance went after fit. ASICS went after lightness. Every one of these brands came into the market and they created commoditization in the running category, and Nike's market share began to go into decline. Now, over that period of time, they tried all kinds of strategies to try to get the market share back. They created new product lines that you might do. They spent a lot more money on mass media, running beautiful ads that Wieden and Kennedy created for them, their longtime agency. But none of these things were moving the needle. The market share continued to decline for over about a decade. In 2006, we came together with Nike and we created this revolutionary new service called Nike Plus. Now, this is a 180-degree turn. So Nike's going from just making running shoes to now creating a service, a technology-based service for runners. It was originally a chip in a shoe that allowed you to track your speed and your distance, and it transmitted that data to an iPod. And from the iPod, you could sync to the Nike Plus website, the Nike Plus platform, and you could share your data with many other runners. You could challenge them. You could kind of see your own data. And we see Nike going down the path of becoming a service company alongside being a product manufacturer as well. Nike Plus, less than a year after its introduction, had grown Nike's market share 20% in running shoes. So this is a company that had been in decline for over a decade, and suddenly the launch of this new technology service called Nike Plus brings their market share up 20% in the first year, and now all of their competitors are scrambling to figure out how they're going to keep up with what Nike has done by going down the path of becoming functionally integrated. About 2 years after the launch of Nike Plus, we created a global event called the Human Race. It was time to coincide with the Beijing Olympics, and we got over 800,000 runners to use the Nike Plus platform to compete in a global 10K race that set a world record and got tons of press and PR. And about 2 years after the Human Race, the world had again changed dramatically. Two new inventions had come along that completely changed the world, and it became a moment in time when we had to rethink Nike Plus. The first, of course, was the invention of smartphones, things like the iPhone, that have a GPS built inside of it. So there's no longer a need to put a chip in a shoe, and in fact, we can make Nike Plus available to any runner. You don't even need to have Nikes in order to use what we created. And the second thing, of course, was the success of Facebook and social networking. And so at the end of 2010, we looked at how to reinvent Nike Plus, and I'll show the first video of what we did.
This used to be Nike Plus, a sensor in a pair of Nikes that talk to an iPod that synced to the Nike Plus platform. Today, it's a completely new product, technology, and experience. Introducing the Nike Plus GPS app. Through GPS technology and the massive Plus community, runners can connect, race, and share, whether laced up with Nikes or not, and all through the mobile app itself. Now, the world's largest running club is always in your pocket. Run anywhere. Nike Plus uses GPS to track your progress. Let your Facebook friends know that you're going for a run.
You're working out. You're dedicated. Sweet like bear meat.
Beginning workout.
Indoors, the accelerometer senses motion to track your workout.
Distance, 0.8 miles.
Each time a Facebook friend likes or comments on your run, your ears ring with applause, helping you take it to the next level.
You ran all week. Who does that?
Your pace is measured and displayed on a color-coded map.
Well done, baby.
So that's kind of the state of the art of Nike Plus running. It has a whole ecosystem. There's a bunch of different products that make up that ecosystem. But in the last 6 weeks, we've really launched a slew of new products in this new Nike digital sport ecosystem. including Fuelband, which launched January 19th. This is a bracelet that you wear on your wrist that tracks your physical activity throughout the day, and it syncs to a mobile application. This product is a huge hit. There's 150,000 back orders on Nike Store as they're ramping up manufacturing. Most recently, about 3 weeks ago, we launched 2 new products. The first is Nike Plus Training, which I'll show the video for.
Introducing Nike Plus Training, your new personal trainer, ready to serve up inspiration every day from the world's best athletes. Built-in sensors in your Nike Plus training shoes capture your every move. Every shuffle, step, lunge, and jump. So your workout becomes a game you play with your friends and yourself, wherever you want, whenever you want. Welcome to Nike Plus Training.
And on the same day that we introduced that product, we also launched Nike Plus Basketball.
How do you measure greatness? Quickness? Hustle? Vertical? Nike Plus Basketball tracks them all. How high you jump, how quick you are, and how hard you play. So you can compete against your friends, your rivals, and yourself every time you play. Nike Plus Basketball allows you to see your game like never before.
So this is the path that I think many companies are going to go down. They're going to move from just being product manufacturers to having products and digital services in the marketplace that connect back to these products and create this value for the consumer. So what we're seeing is that they're all evolving, and most of these companies have never done this before. They don't have a legacy or a history of being in the service business. They're product manufacturers. They're horizontally integrated product manufacturers, but they're going to have to create these whole ecosystems like you've seen Nike doing across all of its different franchises. And along the way, as these new things are invented, there's going to be all kinds of new work for agencies. We can create all kinds of great new campaigns to help launch these things. But that's not our ambition at RGA. We don't want to just make a campaign about one of these new products or services. We have the ambition of being able to help a client do all of it, as we've done with Nike. We help co-conceive of Fuelband and training and basketball. We designed the user experience of all of those products. We developed almost all the technology that you saw behind it. We created the videos that you just saw that helped bring them to market. We created the launch event in New York City where press and influencers were brought in to see these things firsthand. Our ambition is to be able to do everything across what a client needs to become functionally integrated, from the conception of these new things all the way out to the execution and the campaign that launches it, and everything in between. And we've been evolving our business model to be able to do that all along. There's this interesting interplay between the talent that you have, which is represented on the left, and the kinds of things that you can do. And in the early days of RGA as an agency, we had a small list of things that we were able to do. But over time, we've added more and more things to the list in this very integrated fashion. And we've gotten to the point where we are today, where there's this complete integration of talent and offerings that you see. Now, these offerings turn out to be almost exactly the things that you would need as a client if you want to become functionally integrated. The ability to develop product innovation, design of things, technology, the integration into mobile and social, even retail stores, data visualization. You saw a lot of data throughout almost all of those products, the way that a consumer would see their data, all the way up to the launch event that brings the thing to market and the campaign that the consumer might see at the same time. I'll skip this. So a great example of how we've become functionally integrated for our clients is around the launch of Google Wallet, which happened last year. And this is my last video.
In 2011, the way we pay changed forever. Introducing Google Wallet. Now you can pay with a tap of your phone. It makes your phone your wallet and holds things like credit cards, loyalty cards, and offers. To officially launch this entirely new mobile payment system, Google partnered with RGA to design the experience and position and brand the product. For the wallet identity, the W system conveyed how the product behaves. Other Google Commerce channels like Shopper and Offers were designed by RGA as a suite of brands in their mobile payment system. We also worked with Google to enhance the user experience and visual design of the Wallet mobile app and Wallet launch site. And we gave Google Offers, their low-price deals platform, its online presence. These efforts led to the Google Wallet press event in New York. RGA worked closely with Google to concept and execute the kickoff event, a digital environment with demonstration and merchant testimonial as the centerpieces. Press, bloggers, and consumers across the web watched together as Google unveiled the future for how we will all shop. The next phase is to bring Google Wallet to the world. RGA is debuting an OLA campaign around what Google Wallet buys. And pretty soon you'll be seeing Google Offers tags on billboards as well as banners. Right now, in fact, Google Wallet has taken over the American Eagle Outfitters flagship store in Times Square to give every customer a chance to check out a Google Wallet-enabled phone and tap around the store for special discounts. Google's aim is to revolutionize commerce through technology and ask you to kiss your wallet goodbye. Here's another way we're getting the message out.
Thank you very much.